Commissioner Roemer, followed by Commissioner Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to start by saying that John Quincy Adams, who was the only person in our history elected to the Congress after the presidency, said that was the best title he ever had. And I know you served there, Tom, and if I slip and call you Congressman, it will be a compliment.
Fine.
Talking about Congress, I served there when they contemplating lashing up all these various cultures and organizations and ultimately created the biggest bureaucracy in the history of our government. I'm worried, quite frankly, having voted against the creation of the Homeland Security Department, that we made something that's more like an elephant chasing a snake. That we've seen this evolution in Al-Qaeda, where they go from putting bombs in a van in 1993 and attacking the World Trade Center, which was right down the street, to simultaneously attacking embassies in Africa and devastatingly killing people, to packing a dinghy full of explosives and killing 17 sailors in the USS Cole, and then, why we're here today, using planes as missiles and killing 3,000 people. Tell me, Congressman Ridge, somebody known as a governor and a congressman that tries to solve problems, and you're known as trying to deal with the art of the possible and solving problems, that you haven't been given an impossible task in matching up this threat with the job you have. What are two dramatic institutional recommendations, suggestions that you would make in order to make your department run better so that it can go after an Al-Qaeda threat that could put 8 people on a plane and be in our country in 6 hours and kill tens of thousands of people?
Well, first of all, I must say that Congress has been very responsive to requests we've made for support for innovations like the U.S. visit program at our borders. While you and I served in Congress together, there were many conversations and many directives to the executive branch to create some form of entry and exit system. That languished for well over 10 years until, in a post-9/11 environment, not only was there an impetus to create the system, but substantial funding that came along with it. We added, frankly, the biometric requirement within our department, feeling that a name-based system that monitored people coming in and out of our country in the long run was of very little value. So I guess if there was an institutional request that I might have vis-a-vis my relationship, our relationship, or any secretary's relationship with Congress, would be the ability to reprogram a little bit more of the money. You can well imagine, Commissioner, that we submit a budget based on what we think our needs are. Congress has the power of the purse strings, very appropriately so. But from time to time, there's a shifting of literally hundreds of millions of dollars from an area that we think that should be a priority to an area that they think that should be a priority. That's the democratic process. That's the way it's worked for 200 years. We want it to continue to work that way. But from time to time, I think if we had the ability to move some of these dollars around, there was a little more flexibility with those dollars. And the second, and this is very mundane, it's very practical. It would be very helpful, I think, if at some point in time there was an effort on the part of Congress to basically reorganize itself so that we could have an even closer day-to-day working relationship with Congress as it relates to their oversight. We're part of the executive branch. Very appropriately, because Congress has the power of the purse strings. They're going to oversee what we do, when we do it, how well we do it, point out our successes, point out our errors, challenge us every step of the way. That's fine. But there are multiple committees of jurisdiction. Last year, we testified before 145 committees or subcommittees. This year, we're already up to 100. Last year, we went to the Hill and briefed over 800 members of Congress or committee staffs. We still have pending over nearly 300 General Accounting Office reports, and we've already submitted at least that number. This is not a complaint about the relationship or the oversight. That's constitutional. We need it. It would be nice, however, I think we could be even more effective in what we're doing in partnership with Congress if there was some means of reducing, frankly, the multiple layers of interaction that we encounter every single day.
Well, sir, you're very polite about it. It is absolutely absurd that Congress would require you to report to 88 different subcommittees and committees when we're supposed to be fighting al-Qaeda. Maybe there are 2 or 3 that could claim jurisdiction, and I hope this commission will make some serious and substantive institutional recommendations for Congress to reorganize itself so you can do their job, you can do your job of getting al-Qaeda, and they can do their job more effectively of oversight.
Would be most welcome.
Let me ask you another question about this incident command structure that has been the topic of conversation the last couple days. New York City has had a tough time getting there, from Governor Pataki issuing an executive order in 1996 to Mayor Giuliani issuing some guidelines in July of 2001, to Mayor Bloomberg deciding last Friday that he might try to imitate this kind of incident command system. In your opinion, Congressman Ridge, does this announcement by Mayor Bloomberg last week, does it meet the October 1 federal requirements to make sure that the New York City is eligible for funds contingent upon 2 things: adoption of this incident command structure, and 2, regular use of such a unified system?
Without knowing all of the details of his announcement, my preliminary conclusion is that it does. I would like some refinement, however, because under the National Incident Management System that we have developed as part of the Department of Homeland Security's partnering with the state and locals, we've made some very specific recommendations, and it highlights the challenge of creating a national infrastructure over a federal government. We have layers of jurisdictions that we can cajole, sometimes we can leverage, sometimes we can convince. But the National Incident Management System, we know that if an incident occurs, I will identify a principal federal officer that will coordinate the federal activity. We want, as part of the National Incident Management System, whether it's New York, Boston, wherever, we want one operations center. We don't need operations centers scattered all over a city. And we need someone within that operations center to be in charge. So there is one voice speaking on behalf of that community and coordinating the local effort. My sense is that the mayor is certainly moving in the right direction, and I suspect that there's more clarity in the details of his announcement that would certainly qualify him for that support.
Well, speaking personally, I hope New York City does qualify. I think New York City and the state of New York could probably use a great deal of more funds to protect so many valuable assets here. We've heard from a number of experts, however, that have said they're not sure that this agreement on Friday, including a panel that testified just an hour or so before you, that it meets the requirements based upon, the adoption of this unified command structure, or that it's regularly used and implemented as well.
Well, I would tell you that, if I might, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Commissioner.
Sure, go ahead.
When we have a unique opportunity in this department to really build the kind of long-term sustainable relationship with our partners at the state and local level. And we've got great partners with the first responder and first preventer community in New York City, for example. And I would tell you that if we took a preliminary look at that decision and that announcement and found that for whatever reason it was not up to standards, part of our job is to make sure that it is. So that I can virtually assure you that if it isn't, between now and October 1, New York City will be eligible.
Let me get into another area that I'm very concerned about, just generally speaking, about the Homeland Security. I'm a fan, I am a big believer in national assessments and national metrics. How do we assess the most likely targets that terrorists are going to pick out when they come after us next week, tomorrow, next year? Is that a chemical plant in San Jose, California, that if they effectively target that, it could kill hundreds of thousands of people? Is that a nuclear power plant, one of 104 in our country, over the border of my home state of Indiana? Is that some of the great landmarks we have in this city or the Capitol in Washington? I worry that we have not done this national assessment through the Department of Homeland Security, and two, that we have a metric system, Congressman, that says to the United States Congress, you can't just spend funds on a small fire department in Northern California that is 10,781 on the national assessment list, and you're not funding needed programs right here in New York City that are high targets, that are likely targets, and that may be hit very soon. How can you give me some better assurances that, one, we have done a national assessment of these terrorist targets, which I don't think we have, and two, that we can work with Congress and get a metric system set up so that the expenditures are going to the high priority needs and not just to chairmen or ranking members of committees in Congress that funnel that money out to their constituents, and it's really not protecting our national interests, but more of a parochial concern?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to explain in some detail how we operate within the Department of Homeland Security, particularly as it relates to your question of identifying critical infrastructure and prioritizing that within our country we would go first to secure. First of all, we don't have the luxury in Homeland Security to guess as to whether or not it will be explosives, it will be chemical, it will be radiological, it will be biological. So on a day-to-day basis, from investment of our time and resources and technology, working with training and exercises and the like, we deal with the possibility of all of those kinds of attacks. So again, we have to be as prepared as we can and better prepared every single day to deal with a broad range of attacks. We know there's a fairly large menu that they could choose from. Now, some of these attacks, just as they turn commercial airliners into missiles, involve taking assets that are very much a part of who we are as a country, part of an $11 trillion gross domestic product, which means we are a target-rich environment, and turning these assets in our economy that improve our quality of life, that are very much a part of who we are and how we live, and turning them into weapons or using them as means of destruction. Now, we have begun that process. Remember, it's $11 trillion economy, working with the states, and we are obliged by the end of this year to have a national database of critical infrastructure. Having said that, we continue to make those assessments. But on a day-to-day basis within the Department of Homeland Security, we are working with telecommunications, energy, chemical facilities, with the information that we have now to begin securing them at a higher level. So one, we work every single day on multiple methods of attack. Every single day we're developing the national database. We need to know what we have, and the loss of which would result in catastrophic loss of life or economic damage. But you should also know, depending on a threat or in response to an incident, we go right back out. Post 3/11 after Madrid, we went right back out and did additional vulnerability assessments of mass transit and railroads and talked to these companies, talked to the trade associations, made some recommendations. We began to take a look at some other means of security and protection. So we have a normal operational structure. We're building that database. A threat or incident will drive us to a particular venue, a particular target, where we immediately move to improve security.
So that means we're still working on this national assessment.
Oh, I think that's right. And we're getting great help from our partners at the state and local level.
I just hope that we would expedite that national assessment and also work on a metric system so we know where that money's going. Thank you,
in the
Mr.
works.
Chairman. Thank you.